Right now, your brain is doing something it was never supposed to do. You are sitting still. You are not being chased. There is no fire, no storm, no predator crouching in the dark. And yet something inside your head will not stop moving. It keeps scanning, keeps searching, keeps pulling you back to thoughts you did not choose to think. You try to sit with the quiet, and the quiet fights back. The real question is not why you feel restless. The real question is why your brain treats silence like a threat. And the answer reaches back further than you can imagine.
Your brain is not broken. It is not anxious because something went wrong with you. It is anxious because something went exactly right for a world that no longer exists. For 300,000 years, your ancestors never once sat alone in a quiet room with nothing to do and nowhere to be. That experience is so new in evolutionary terms that your brain has no category for it, no protocol, no off switch. It was built for a world where silence meant danger, and stillness meant you had been left behind. And being left behind in that world did not mean a bad day. It meant death. This is the story of why your mind will not leave you alone, and why the most uncomfortable thing you can do in the modern world is also the most ancient.
Think about the last time you had absolutely nothing to do. No phone within reach, no screen, no task. Maybe you were waiting somewhere. Maybe the power went out. Maybe you sat in a quiet room and genuinely tried, to just exist without input. How long did it take before the discomfort started? A minute? Less? That itch to check something, to do something, to think about something specific rather than letting your thoughts drift wherever they wanted. You probably assumed that was a phone addiction, a modern problem, something about dopamine and algorithms and the attention economy. But that feeling is not new. It is not a product of the 21st century. It is something far older wearing modern clothes. In 2014, a psychologist named Timothy Wilson at the University of Virginia ran a series of experiments that should have been forgettable, but turned out to be one of the most revealing studies in the history of modern psychology. The setup was simple. Participants were placed alone in a room. No phone, no book, no music, just a chair and their own thoughts for anywhere between 6 and 15 minutes. That was the entire experiment. Sit alone with your thoughts. Most people reported it as genuinely unpleasant. They fidgeted, they felt anxious, they could not settle. But what happened next is what made this study impossible to ignore. Wilson gave some participants access to a small button in the room. Pressing the button would deliver a mild electric shock. Not dangerous, just uncomfortable. And a significant portion of people, left alone long enough with nothing but their own minds, chose to press it. They chose a small physical pain over the discomfort of sitting alone with their own thoughts. One man shocked himself 190 times in 15 minutes. He was not disturbed. He was just bored. Or more precisely, he was just alone, and his brain could not tolerate what that felt like. Wilson did not frame this as a technology problem. He framed it as a revelation about the human mind itself. The brain, he argued, is not designed to be a passive observer of silence. It is designed to be constantly engaged with the world outside itself. Not because humans are shallow or distracted, but because for the vast majority of human history, an unoccupied mind was a mind in danger. To understand why, you have to go back, a long way back. Your ancestors did not live alone. They couldn't. A single human being in the African savanna 200,000 years ago had no claws, no venom, no armor, no speed advantage over almost any serious predator in the environment. What they had was each other. Human survival was a group project from the very beginning. Your ancestors lived in bands of roughly 25 to 50 individuals, and those bands were everything. They were food, they were warmth, they were protection, they were information. If you knew where the water was, you survived. If you knew which plants were safe, you survived. If you knew the social dynamics of your group well enough to stay in good standing, you survived. None of that knowledge lived inside a single brain. It lived between brains, passed through conversation and observation and constant social contact. The group was the survival mechanism, and your brain knew it. This is what researchers in evolutionary psychology call the social brain hypothesis, a framework developed extensively by the British anthropologist Robin Dunbar at the University of Oxford. Dunbar's argument is elegant and unsettling in equal measure. The human brain did not grow large primarily to solve abstract problems or develop language or build tools. It grew large to manage the complexity of social relationships, to track who was loyal and who was not, to remember who had shared food with you and who had taken more than their share, to model what other people were thinking, predict their behavior, and navigate the politics of group life without being excluded.
This is the part that should make you sit back for a moment. When your brain is unoccupied in a quiet room, it is not simply wandering, it is scanning. It is doing exactly what it was built to do in exactly the situation your ancestors feared most. Separation from the group in the ancient world did not come with a comfortable chair and central heating. It came with the sound of something moving in the dark. It came with cold, with hunger, with the genuine possibility that whatever had separated you from your group was going to kill you before morning. Your brain cannot distinguish between those two scenarios. Silence is silence. Stillness is stillness. And in the original context for which your brain was built, both of those things were warnings. Neuroscientist Matthew Lieberman at UCLA spent years studying what happens inside the brain when it is not given a task. What he found overturned a long-held assumption about mental rest. When the brain is given nothing external to focus on, it does not go quiet. It activates what Lieberman calls the default mode network, a system of interconnected regions that immediately begins generating social thoughts, thoughts about other people, thoughts about relationships, past conversations, imagined future interactions, thoughts about what someone thinks of you, what you should have said, what might happen next between you and someone you care about. The brain's default state, the thing it does automatically when left alone, is to think about other people. Your mind does not wander off into peaceful abstraction when given freedom. It goes straight to the social world. Because that is what it was built to do.
You have been told your entire life that being comfortable with your own thoughts is a virtue, that the ability to sit in silence and be at peace with yourself is a sign of psychological health, of wisdom, of emotional maturity. Meditation traditions around the world have been teaching this for thousands of years, and there is real value in learning to tolerate solitude. But the struggle you feel when you try to do it is not a failure of discipline. It is not evidence that you are somehow less evolved than the person who seems perfectly happy sitting quietly for an hour. It is evidence that your brain is working exactly as it was designed to work. The discomfort is the feature, not the bug. Your brain resists isolation because isolation was the most dangerous state your ancestors could be in. The anxiety you feel in silence is your 300,000-year-old nervous system doing its job. It is trying to keep you connected. It is trying to keep you alive.
John Cacioppo, a neuroscientist at the University of Chicago who spent decades studying loneliness and social connection, found that the brain registers social isolation using the same neural circuits it uses to register physical pain. Not metaphorical pain, the same circuits. Being cut off from social contact activates threat responses in the brain that are functionally identical to the responses triggered by physical danger. Loneliness, in the brain's language, is not an emotion, it is an alarm. And an unoccupied mind, alone in a quiet room with no social input, starts running a version of that alarm on low. Not loud enough to register as distress, just loud enough to make you deeply, persistently uncomfortable. Just loud enough to make you reach for your phone. Think about that for a second.
Your phone is not just entertainment. For your brain, it is a social prosthetic. It delivers faces, voices, names, reactions, the suggestion of human presence. It does not satisfy your social hunger the way real contact does, but it quiets the alarm just enough to make the silence bearable. This is why you pick it up without deciding to. This is why you unlock it and scroll through nothing and put it down and pick it up again 4 minutes later. You are not addicted to content. You are running an ancient program that is desperately trying to locate your group. And your phone, to that ancient program, looks just enough like a signal that it temporarily calms the scan.
This is also why the shower is where your best ideas happen, and why the drive to work with no screen and no task suddenly floods your mind with thoughts and memories and half-formed ideas you never asked for. When your brain cannot scan the external social world, it turns inward and simulates it. It runs conversations with people who are not there. It replays past interactions and rehearses future ones. It generates social scenarios to process, because processing social scenarios is what it does when there is nothing else demanding its attention. Your wandering mind is not a distraction. It is your brain practicing the skill it values most.
The world your ancestors built around themselves was a world designed, without anyone consciously designing it, to give the brain exactly what it needed. Constant low-level social contact, the presence of familiar faces, the sounds of other people nearby, even when no conversation was happening. Shared tasks, shared meals, shared fire. The modern world dismantled almost all of that in the blink of an evolutionary eye. Single-occupancy apartments did not exist for most of human history. The concept of eating alone, sleeping alone, traveling alone, spending entire days without meaningful face-to-face contact with other humans is so recent that your brain has had no time to adapt to any of it. The architecture of modern life was not built for the brain you have. And the brain you have keeps trying to navigate modern life with a social map drawn 300,000 years ago.
So what do you do with this? Because understanding it is one thing, living with it is another. The first thing you can do is stop misreading the signal. When the discomfort of silence comes, when your mind starts churning and you cannot seem to settle, the old interpretation was that something was wrong with you. The new interpretation is that your brain is doing its job. It is a social alarm going off in an environment that does not match what it was built for. You are not broken. You are precisely calibrated for a world that no longer exists around you. That doesn't solve it, but it changes what the feeling means. And what a feeling means changes how you carry it. The second thing you can do is give your brain what it is actually asking for. Not a screen, not a scroll, not the simulated presence of strangers on the internet. Actual, physical, unscheduled time with another human being. Research consistently shows that even brief, low-pressure social contact, a conversation with a neighbor, sitting in a coffee shop where other people are present, a short call with someone you know well, calms the exact neural circuits that make solitude feel threatening. Your brain is not asking for much. It is asking for evidence that your group is still there. Small, genuine moments of human contact deliver that evidence in a way that no algorithm can replicate.
And the third thing, the one that is hardest and most worth knowing, is this. The brain that cannot sit still in silence is the same brain that built every civilization that has ever existed on this planet. The restlessness is real. The discomfort is real, but so is what it is pointed at. Your brain is searching for connection because connection, in the world it was shaped by, was the most important thing in existence. Not comfort, not entertainment, not stimulation for its own sake. Other people. The same minds, the same voices, the same faces that made survival possible for hundreds of thousands of years before a single city was built or a single word was written down. Your brain was never meant to be alone with its thoughts, And the proof of that is not a weakness. It is everything humanity has ever made together. Right now, your brain is doing something it was never supposed to do. Sitting in the quiet, looking for the group, waiting for a sign that someone, somewhere is still there. And somewhere nearby, they are.